How are you doing, Brian?
Fine, thank you, Jeremy.
Great. Well, I'm going to mention, first of all, this memoir, Putting the Rabbit in the Hat. Brian Cox, there it is. And, well, I'm laughing because you are unsparing with your opinions. But let's go back to your early life, Brian, because it was tough. There's no doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was.
You lost your dad when you were 8.
Yeah, my dad died when I was 8, and my mother had as a result of his death, had a series of nervous breakdowns and was pretty incapacitated for the next, 5 or 6 years.
And you were brought up effectively by your sisters?
Yeah, mainly, yeah. Also, I spent a lot of time on my own, so I learned to be independent far too young.
And searching in the opening chapters for the moment you thought, maybe I'm an actor, I alighted on this moment in the school playground where you were told essentially to beat up a lad who was a victim of everyone. Just tell us what happened.
Well, it was a young boy, a guy who I suspect was probably on the spectrum. And he was a sweet kid, never said boo to a goose or harm to anybody. And of course, the school playground can be one of the most vicious places on God's earth. And I was sort of goaded into trying to have a fight with this lad, who I didn't want to have a fight with. But there was a few roughnecks who were pushing me and pushing me and pushing me. So eventually I grabbed hold of myself by my collar like this, and I threw myself right across the playground. And I started beating myself up. And very slowly, these boys started to drift away from me because they reckoned that I was probably somewhat touched.
But then you thought, okay, maybe acting is the world for me.
Yeah, well, I always felt that. I mean, that was when I was very young. Particularly at New Year was a big festival in Scotland, and a huge festival. And my dad, this is before he passed away naturally, he would always have stacks of people came into the house, and everybody did what was called a turn. You did your own performance. So I was summoned from my bed at 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, that's my dad, that's my mum. I was summoned from my bed at 1 o'clock in the morning, and I had to sing. And the thing I did at the age of 3 was Al Jolson impersonations with all the actions and the whole thing. And I realized then the effect it had on the room. And it was that effect that I thought, what is it that does this to people, that they come together in a kind of harmony? And that was the thing that really got me going about being an actor.
And you describe about Dundee Repertory Theatre, and actually after that, in a way, your procession was smoother than one might have imagined. And we've just talked, I don't know if you heard, Brian, we were talking about the BAFTAs, and we have got the return of very posh actors now, Benedict Cumberbatch, Eddie Redmayne and so on. I wonder whether you think the chance isn't there anymore for a kid like you would have been.
It's very tough. We have no system. You have to understand that the 60s was an age of incredible social mobility, and I was lucky to catch that. And I came in the wake of, they were all much older than me, but I came in the wake of people like Alan Bates, Albert Finney, who became great friends, Peter O'Toole, who I worked with eventually, Tom Courtenay, and actresses like Rita Tushingham, and Judi Dench, the young Judi Dench, and the young Vanessa Redgrave. David Warner. There was an amazing kind of, everybody was welcome to the party, as it were. And that subsequently closed down. We don't have the proper kind of roads to get to work. And for working class kids, it's really hard for them. It's really tough for them now. Whereas what was encouraged when I was a boy, I was welcomed. I had a full grant. I mean, nobody was rich. I had all my expenses paid. I had my fees paid. I had a living allowance, and I was poor. I was, dirt poor. And it was an incredible time, and probably the best time ever. And of course, it was also the time of the Beatles, the Stones, the Who, the Kinks, the sort of music. But everything was happening at that point, and anything was possible. And of course, we've suddenly sunk back to our old feudalism, and that's the way it goes.
Well, I must.
We can't throw.
I was just going to say, I must ask you about Succession, because we're talking of feudalism, right? And Storm here, my co-presenter, is a massive fan as well. We talk about it all the time. We've had an interesting conversation with Anne Widdecombe in the break, Brian. I've been trying to sell it to you, Anne, haven't I?
You failed.
Well, it's up there with Sopranos, it's up there with Breaking Bad. And Brian, what's it like for you in your senior years or later years as an actor to suddenly get the role of, I don't know, the century almost?
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. I mean, I can't complain about my career. I've had a very good career. But the interesting thing is that I've lost my anonymity, which I valued a great deal. I didn't realize how much I valued it, but it's, I'm no longer anonymous. People immediately come up and they always ask me to tell them to do what. And I'm always very happy to do that.
What, swear at them?
Yeah.
Well, this isn't selling it to Anne. But listen, Brian, let's just play a clip. Anne, watch this. You're going to love it, okay? Let's remind. So, Brian, in summary, Brian plays a character called Logan Roy, who is at the head of a family empire, a bit like the Murdochs. It's a media empire, and he is brutal. Let's have a look.
My family have disappeared. I need to know where everyone is and what everyone's thinking.
There he is, the little man who started this big war.
Right now, I'm the real you.
Sure, and I'm the real you. You sound deranged.
As I understand it, you want to take down your dad without implicating yourself.
Correct.
And without damaging the company to the extent that you lose control at your shareholder meeting.
Do you have an actual case, Ken?
Yes, I can kill him.
Is he gonna watch?
Could we make a note in the minutes that he's watching this?
There's blood in the water. Sharks are coming.
Love it. Love it.
You love it as well. Owen Jones loves it.
Obsessed with it.
I know, Anne. I know. But honestly, if you and I sat down and watched it, after 10 minutes...
That's what you say about football
you'd be begging
matches.
for more.
Just
I know.
that people
I know.
have different tastes.
Would you try and sell it to Anne Widdecombe for us, Brian, or are we not going to stoop?
I wouldn't bother.
I mean, the characters are less obnoxious than most of the cabinet ministers that Anne works with. So
Sorry, Brian, go on.
I didn't work in the cabinet.
No, I said, I think you're on a hiding to nothing trying to sell it to Anne. She's implacable.
Yeah, well, she's tough on when you made up your mind, Anne, I must say. All right, listen, actually, listen, I will ask you about politics, Brian, and what's going on, because it's utter chaos. What do you make of it?
Politics. It's so depressing.
Well, is he gone? I mean, do you think Boris Johnson will survive the weekend?
Oh, well, I hope not. But I think that there seems... I was on a program with Andrew Marr and Keir Starmer. We were talking about various things. And he said there's this element now of permitted lying that goes on in Parliament. Well, of course, there's always been permitted lying of one side or another. But it's got crazy, it's got nuts, and particularly this Eton clown has not helped it any, by his compulsive lying. And I really do believe that he needs psychiatric help. And clearly a bunch of his advisors now feel the same.
Yeah. What did you make of the Jimmy Savile taunt?
That was ridiculous. And that was wrong and ridiculous. And he's got a mouth, it's not a potty mouth, but I don't know what kind of a mouth he would describe it. But we have an expression in Scotland, which is you should hud your wisht. Less said, soon as mended.
All right. Well, listen, stay with us, Brian. It's great to have you with us.